Welcome to Systems of Existence. I am so excited, like really so excited to have you, Barry, because I feel like it's a fangirl moment in a way, because it's a fangirl and how do you say it? When you meet your like I've just learned so much from AlfaVedic from the podcast. I could just like binge listen all day long, and that's actually sometimes what I do. Not just because of the guests that you have, but also like just I the last weekend I went into a rabbit hole of like the first episodes that you published where you went into like Lyme disease and like cancer and like your own personal story. And yeah, I mean
Mhm.
there's so much to explore on AlfaVedic. Obviously you also don't just do it yourself. You are also not just doing AlfaVedic, you also have a farm, you have so many different things, and that I would like to highlight or like put under the spotlight of we have to create alternatives for the world, and you're on the forefront of it. So yeah, before I go too much into what I love the most and which topics, I'm gonna give you the mic first and let you introduce yourself in whatever way, shape, or form you would like to get the audience to know you.
Sure. Well, first off, Kathy, thanks so much for having me. Very honored to be with you. And I know we've been trying to make this happen for a while, so I appreciate your patience. You were contacting me, and I was right in the middle of farming, and then that led into harvest, and it gets pretty crazy, farm life, because you have to be flexible to just go wherever you're needed. Yesterday, I was in river fixing our water pump, because we're off grid here and very remote and surrounded by wilderness. So we pump water out of the river. We have springs on the land, and so I was in freezing cold water because our river comes up subterranean. It's pure primal water. And so I had to go for a swim yesterday to get our pumps ready for the winter so we can make it through the season. So anyway, a little bit about my background, and I'll try to keep it short. I'm a jock by trade. I was an athlete, scholarship in college, and everything. Always my life was surrounded around sports, and never really cracked a book, and I was very proud of it because I was kind of rebellious against conventional education. But
Against
then
the
when I got in,
system,
yeah, I just intuitively just resisted everything. But fortunately, I was a good athlete, so I had a scholarship to a lot of major colleges. And in college, I got kind of turned on academically because I was trying to up my game for my sports, and started really doing a lot of research into exercise physiology and nutrition and everything. This is like back in the 60s and early 70s before it was fashionable. And then I just decided, wow, it might be a good idea to actually go to med school and really learn about the body. So I was forced to go into academics full scale, and worked in the conventional medical system and emergency medical services for about 5 years. And then through a turn of events and my own inclinations, I went back to school, went to four-year naturopathic college, and studied with an emphasis in Oriental medicine, Chinese medicine, and classical homeopathy. And because naturopaths weren't licensed in every state back then in the U.S., I afterwards went on to chiropractic college so I could get an alternative license because since I wasn't practicing in hospitals anymore, I had to just do a plan B, so I could open a practice. And then did a lot of postdoctoral training with doctors in Germany, by the way, in
Ah,
your home turf,
okay.
because they were the origins of the authentic bioterrain medicine. So I did a lot of studies there also with French physicians, and a lot of postdoctoral work and everything from osteopathy to more advanced studies in Chinese medicine, but mostly in later years, starting about 40 years ago, I started really dabbling into light and sound therapies and understanding more the energetic consequences of medicine. And that's where a lot of my work has been ever since. And then of course, we're working with herbal medicines and things. It's just one of the modalities in my practice over the years. So I decided to start growing them so I could really learn. And we're right now in the the fourth incarnation of our off-grid farm in a different location. We've changed locations because we keep upgrading into pure spaces and more space. And I went into permaculture farming, and I have my laboratory where I make things out of medicines out of what I grow, and that brings us pretty much to present time.
I love it. Yeah, I know you are in deep into medicine, but what I love the most is that you also just always say, I mean, I don't want to say always say, but you speak out something that I always felt too, where it's all just frequency. You can say it's all placebo, not really, to a certain degree. We can talk about that. But you really feel the energetics and highlight to people the energetics, because that also makes them, at the end of the day, not dependent on a specific medication or a specific,
Mhm.
I know you also work with flower essences and, remedies and like even herbs. People can get like very much addicted, or like they feel like they need it in order to survive, because if you find a cure, you feel like I need to have it in my life for the rest of my life, otherwise I'm screwed again, right? So that's also probably why you work with also sound and frequency in general. We both love Walter Russell. We can talk about that too. So
Mhm.
can you explain to our audience a little bit better how that makes sense when everything is just frequency and the placebo effect and all of that? But why do we still use these tools? Like, why do we still engage with, I want to say, plant medicine and medication in general? Like, why do we use these things if everything could be broken down to it's all just frequency and electricity?
Yeah, excellent question, and one that I've asked myself over the years. I did a little apprenticeship, which I won't get into too deep, but I was taken in under the wing, we'll say, by an indigenous healer who was, when I was in my early 30s, he was in his 90s, and he came from an authentic lineage of people that were chosen at birth to do the medicine, relative to their culture. And it was really an eye opener. Now, I was already tending in an open-minded direction and exploring. And so when this gentleman took me in and I spent a very intense year apprenticeship with him, he did things that, defy your logic and, really forced me to suspend my thinking about what I thought I knew. And, he was also a very grounded individual. It wasn't like woo woo or airy fairy kind of thing. So that was really a foray into a different reality, we'll say. And at the certain point, working with him when he just bent my noodle for a hundredth time, I said, Grandpa, why am I even doing what what I'm doing, which is everything I learned in school, my practice. I had a private practice at the time. And he said, well, your medicine is necessary out there because people are not ready or have the mentality or the consciousness to perceive what I'm doing. So you need to do what you're doing. And what it is it's a transitional tool in order to two-step our species into the reality of who we actually are. So that was because I was ready to chuck everything at that point, everything I ever learned in school, all the things I, was doing at the time. And but I came to peace with it. Now, of course, when I was in emergency medicine, there's a time and place for those things. People were bleeding to death, or their heart stopped, or typical urgent care matters. And I used drugs and all the things that would override certain physiological processes just in order to keep people in their body. So it's legit. And and people were happy when we were able to extend their life in that way. And similarly, going into what you'll call plant medicine and so forth. Well, now that's another step into the direction of pure frequency medicine, as you're alluding to,
Yeah.
because those botanical species carry the original authentic patterns of our creator. They are pure light energy that is configured in a way to do certain things that are analog processes to human physiology, because plants are our mirror image, and every plant, again, provides or is an analog to some organic function within our own body. So when you learn how to pair the two, then you can reinstate those patterns, that are indigenous, we'll say, and then that reinstates that into our own neurological mechanism. So it's still a very valuable modality. Now, when you get into more advanced types of plant medicine that the old alchemists talked about and did, and the things that I do to this day in my lab, and with some more advanced technological twist to them, now you're able to do even better things that are no different than working with pure sound and light, because those patterns provided by nature are informational fields conveyed by light. And our body, which operates exactly like plants, which means we derive our energy through photosynthesis, which would surprise most people. And photosynthesis, of course, is when plants take carbon dioxide, are exhausted, and make oxygen out of it. But they do it in the presence of chlorophyll. Well, in the human photosynthetic physiology, we use melanin, and it does the same thing that photosynthesis does. And that means it disassociates hydrogen and oxygen from water to create energy. So just like plants, we create energy in our bodies direct from the atmosphere, and that is something that has escaped conventional science greatly.
And that's also, I think, the biggest issue, and also the answer kind of to my question, I would say, because if we look into our environment, that's where we get screwed. I mean, we can say the food and everything, but I think that the biggest issue is the environment and all. I mean, if you see everything as electricity, and including ourselves, we can say Kundalini energy, but at the end of the day, it's all just electricity, and our electric circuits are just not flowing properly because of the interference from all the fields. I mean, we can say the microwave, the 5G, all the things, without saying like, oh my gosh, we need to shield ourselves. But that's where it's just too much interference, I want to say. And that's where we can go back to nature, for example, or we can use sound and light and all of these things to harmonize. You also, I know, like Ibrahim Karim's work. Me too. I'm actually wearing his necklace right there. So there are things to harmonize our.
Kathy, sorry, you froze up.
I froze.
You froze up for a second. It's probably on my end. It's okay now. Just so you know, I am off grid. I'm on a satellite, and every once in a while, if I freeze up or you freeze up, I'll let you know. And there might
Oh,
be a
good.
voice lag also. I'm not sure if that's happening on your end. But sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. If you
Okay,
could
good.
repeat that last part.
Yes, I think it was just when I was speaking about the harmonization that I wear Ibrahim Karim's necklace as well.
Oh,
We
right.
speak about harmonizing the frequencies, right? So that's also obviously something that has to do, or is the issue with like the environment. And we spend so much time inside, not going outside, where our health is declining, because I mean, we don't really have oxygen. Like, even we can speak about what's going on with the sun as well. What kind of sunlight do we even absorb right now? So it's all a little bit like wonky out there. That's when we can go into what other people might say conspiracy theories, but there's just this veil, or this like weird, I want to say, clog in our environment, that caps us from nature. So maybe we go into that, like what's happening here,
Sure.
and why would that even be,
Well, we've been hypnotized to take our eye off the ball, and the ball is nature. And the great news that most people don't understand is that when we put our attention on nature, even if you live in the middle of a city, but are more tuned into, again, authentic, creative patterns, used by nature, then now at that point you're drafting the universe, and those synthetic overlays, which are noxious short vertical form waves, which are represent the microwaves that are poisoning us more than any other thing on Earth right now. When our consciousness goes beyond that, rather than focusing, see, they've got us either way. If you're ignorant as far as what those technologies do, and you're just on them all day, well, you're vulnerable. You know, you're going to get, it's going to affect you. And then at the same time, when you start learning about them, and now your attention is on, you know, giving the middle finger to the airplanes flying overhead that are spraying us like bugs, now they've got you again.
Yeah.
So there's a way where I believe we can understand what's going on. We can be adult enough to acknowledge that they're really trying to get us, and you know, without going into paranoia, even though it's true, but then focus ourselves on the truth, and then at that point we are at one with our creator, which creates a majority. And you know, you mentioned Walter Russell, and you also mentioned frequencies. Well, as you're aware, Walter Russell talked about the highest state of being is no frequency at all. And what he was alluding to is that stillness is where true intelligence lies, because our whole creative mechanism, the etheric mechanics, you could, you know, maybe discuss relative to what the old alchemists talked about. They metaphorically use different elements, you know, to name the layers of the etheric mechanism. But the fact is it all starts with consciousness. Without consciousness, you have no creation of light, because consciousness is the only thing that's capable of producing idea or thought or intention, which separates us from, you know, the mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms. We have that prerogative, and that's very special. Now, when we have an idea or a thought or intention, that creates a polarity, which creates resonance. That resonance creates geometry, and that coagulates down through the etheric mechanism. Then it goes through a fermentation process, and it grounds in, you know, in the carbon south pole, and becomes matter. And when we understand how that works, then we can bypass those lower levels of the mechanics, because we're the only ones endowed with the ability to create thought, resonance, geometry, form, function, and we don't have to go through the slow roll of going through all the you know, the different mechanisms. We understand how they work, and that's important. But once you understand that, and then understand who you are, then you can do what the Ascended Master teachings have been talking about for centuries and trying to impart on mankind, is that we have the ability to directly precipitate. And, you know, we're talking about photosynthesis and the dissociation of hydrogen and oxygen to create energy, because hydrogen is what creates that energy. Hydrogen, coincidentally, is that very top level of the etheric mechanism that they used to call the fire element. And, you know, that's why it's very important to free that hydrogen through photosynthesis so that our body has energy, which is the direct, with no middleman, you know, instating, if that's the right word, that hydrogen, that original idea, directly into the south pole of our experience to create anything that we want. And in original research that showed that melanin photosynthesis, you know, assisted by melanin, makes us operate exactly like plants. Well, you know, we have that extra step of, well, we have the ability to be self-determined. So we're in a very special place, you know, within this realm. And Walter Russell explained how that things like chemical processes like photosynthesis that our conventional scientists would explain according to molecular biology and covalent bonding and so forth. Well, that's a good metaphor. It's not true. It doesn't happen like that. It's just a valuable metaphor, just like the old alchemists use, you know, the elements as metaphors for the etheric mechanism. So we can just bypass all of that and, you know, be co-creators. And as Walter Russell said, well, you're not creating resonance meeting resonance, and therefore all the myriad of complex life forms, but you're actually looking at waveforms from consciousness at their vortex mating with other like or compatible waveforms to create complexes that our scientists might call molecules versus individual atoms, of which there's no such thing of either.
Yeah, and I think that's where the I don't want to say, yeah, I want to say issue is, because we cannot, when we look around, it's so hard for the human brain to wrap our head around that we really are just water. We really are just, when I mean, enlightened beings said it before, you're a drop in the ocean, but everyone thought it was a metaphor, but actually it's not really a metaphor. It's actually true. Like you are
Yeah.
actually a droplet of water, and if we look at the water experiment and everything, we can speak to the water, speak an intention into the water, and in a way also, and I mean, that's why I love to work with sound and like with frequency tuning work, with the biofield and all of that, because it's really just about structuring your own inner water all the time, which also makes you then flow in a specific way or not, right, if you go against the flow. But then it's also the question around, if we can speak that intention into our own waters, can we not really, at the end of the day, negate everything that is working against us? I want to say, it's like, say, like, I mean, yeah, like, let's just take an easy example, the microwave, where it doesn't harm us, where I can use the microwave, but it doesn't affect me.
Absolutely. Um, I I can't disagree with that. I would prefer that we had
Not to.
organic technologies that actually nurtured us and promoted superconductivity in our neurology versus the opposite, which is impeding our neurology and destroying our neurology. And then, we wouldn't have to have our game face on all the time. It would sure be a lot easier. But, maybe it's purposeful and backing us into a corner where there's nowhere else to go. And I think that's where humanity is right now.
Mm. Speaking about, the time that we even chose for our conversation today, I mean, I feel like this week, it's just, I don't know I would love to hear how you feel about it, but I just feel like something is really going down this week. I mean, the
Mhm.
recording is 11/11, so that's a special day anyways. And obviously we just came out of a very significant week for the United States. You are in the United States, but I feel like that was just not even the start of what's happening when Pluto finally moves into Aquarius also. And then we have a really jam-packed full moon with Uranus, and just like a lot of unexpected stuff, a lot of solar activities, if you follow that too. I would actually love for you, like, your take on all the solar activities and the solar storms, the solar flares, what's happening with the Earth as well, because I feel like there's definitely stuff happening in the atmosphere, and how that affects us actually.
Yeah, well, if you want to go more to a macro look, when you look at our realm, whatever you believe our realm is, we don't even know that for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, there seems to be more evidence that things are revolving around us versus a heliocentric model. That's, opens up a whole new can of worms, but there's just too many unexplainable incongruities with the conventional model of our existence. But either way, if you go, like, for instance, to the work of Rudolf Steiner, and look at the sky clock, we have a normal, flow one direction and then counter in another direction of that sky clock. The retrograde version of the sky clock that's countering the one that we pay more attention to, well, that is actually provoking, we'll say, larger cosmic events that affect the evolution of the entire realm and all of life upon it. And we are getting bombarded right now at this point with cosmic rays, which are, more significant again, that are affecting our consciousness. And I firmly believe that a lot of the efforts by the predator class right now, with spraying the skies and injecting bad things into our bodies and all poisoning our food and everything. That is an effort to shut down our bandwidth of perception so that we are not amenable to those cosmic rays coming in that would wake us up. Now, a bunch of us evidently came into this incarnation with a job to do and also with a memory. And I believe this because I compare notes with a lot of people all over the world, and we're kind of saying the same thing. And we are taking advantage of what we're being exposed to in the best of ways, and also in a way where those that resonance from the creator from this very special time that we're alive in right now are able to come through us. And just like water being a transmitting utility, and no coincidence that we're mostly water, then we are able, when we are open in our consciousness to bringing in those higher understandings, those cosmic energies, then we become a conduit and ground that into the realm itself that is going to go a long way to wake everybody up. And it's very necessary because there are tens of thousands of people just like us who have had many incarnations, come out the other side as realized, we'll just, for lack of a better term, say ascended beings. And without them being within that hierarchy of intelligence within our realm, life would not be possible because they are the conduits for higher intelligence that created this realm in the first place. And then they require those of us on the surface of the realm to, invite them to use us to raise the consciousness of the whole world. So, and that doesn't at all suggest that some people are more spiritual than others or less so. It just means that through personal choice, whatever reason, some people want to stay asleep and other people don't. Some people want to be left alone and some people don't want to leave you alone.
I actually just uploaded a video on Instagram where I spoke about this. Like, I just don't even like that we use the term spiritual or not spiritual because we're all spirits. Like, how can you be more spiritual or not spiritual? We're all spirits. It's
What's
like,
not spiritual?
yeah, exactly. Like
It
everything is spiritual.
Go back to Walter Russell. You have consciousness that creates resonance, it creates form and function in life and experience as we know it. So it all comes from spirit. We're all individualizations of the creator in order to have that option to do it in the first place. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's nothing not spiritual. I agree with you. I don't like that terminology either.
It's just like, yeah, going back to Walter Russell, it's like, is the consciousness right now in an awake, aware state or in a sleep state? And, the sleep state is important too, because it's also kind of like an experience for consciousness to just completely be blindsided and not know anything, right?
And define sleep, define awake,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
even think we know which is which.
yeah. I think we flipped it around, and we are actually right now obviously in a dream. Not obviously for everyone, but it's just like very, when we go into like sleep and what is sleep, was dreaming, what is inception, like all of these things. It's yeah, everything at the end of the day. I think you have a podcast, even the Upside Down Cosmos, which is not really about that, but everything is kind of like upside down, like the opposite as we've learned.
I believe that to be true. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So,
So go ahead.
so we are obviously in this like transit. We chose to be here to be like the bridges in a way.
Mhm.
But what do you see is the great opportunity? Because I also feel like we are really on the threshold to some major changes. That's why we were probably really excited to experience this and to be, partaking in it. What do you see or sense coming, and where do you feel like we are headed towards as a collective? Also with all of the, no, that I want to say the shit that's going down with like the, being exposed, like the mind control, the MK Ultra, like all of these things, the elephants finally coming out of, out of the room. How is this all going to play out? What would you say?
Well, it's going to play out as it is already begun to play out with a lot of us. Just to have this conversation, it means that you and I have just opened up to certain possibilities. And I started my journey a long time ago just because I'm older, and so maybe 50 some odd years ago, I'm in mid 70s right now. I started looking into a lot of things, and as a result of that, my body changed, my experience changed, everything's changed. And in fact, I talk about my journey began in sports. Well, sports was very important to me because it's there that I first connected the dots. When I was doing serious training for high level competition, and especially in martial arts later on, because I became very seriously involved in that, you're able to see firsthand how doing certain things, certain practices, even on a physical level, make your body different. And then when you get really proficient, you are able to do things physically, athletically that you weren't able to do before. And also, as far as training, I found that once I set my yearly intention for, my training program for the coming season, my body started changing even before I had a chance to get out in the track and run and do all the other things. So I, start connecting those dots. So to answer your question, as a species, that's where we're going. We're going beyond a species that believes we need to consume our own environment, our own creations in order to thrive. A species that believes that we need to earn money in order to thrive. A species that believes that there is some kind of earthly authority that has the right to override our divine birthrights and tell us what to do. So those are all the things on the table. I'm a political atheist, and I don't get involved in the political scene. However, I do look at this last election recently in the US as very significant.
Yeah.
Now, Trump is a mixed bag, um, but I believe he's less evil than the alternative,
I
and
would
maybe
say
not
he's
evil at all.
playing the perfect role.
Yeah.
That's what I
So,
always, yeah.
yeah. Now, if you understand in the US, and this will hopefully go into what your original question, was about, we have a political system that is a corporate, private structure. It's not a government as was established according to our constitutional republic guidelines. So when I go in and I vote for Trump or Kamala, it doesn't matter. It's none of my business. They are vying, they're being vetted to be the next CEO of US Incorporated.
Yeah.
Now, in that situation, a lot of people that understand that, they say, well, it's all a farce and everything. And I agree to a certain point. On the other hand, if you have a huge corporate structure that has garnished so much power because we gave it to them without even realizing it, and the people that are driving that corporate structure are aimed right at our heads and going to take us all out. And then I have the option of a Donald Trump who maybe has some nationalistic tendencies and maybe really wants to go back to sound money and small businesses being left alone and less regulations. Maybe it's his own ulterior motives for his own business interests. Maybe he's playing a role in some other devious way. I don't know, but it's a good thing because people now all of a sudden are feeling a little breathing room. They're feeling that life is a little less ominous, and that is awakening the human spirit to all those other possibilities, which start with the right for self-determination. And that is why the United States is so special, not because of political reasons or superiority, relative to nation states. It's because of many people from countries throughout the world came here for a chance to do something different. And it wasn't just a melting pot where everybody comes here. My ancestors came here not that long ago. I have dual citizenship with Italy. So my immediate ancestors are Italian. My mom's also got part of her ancestry from Peru. But the point is they came here to escape communism and fascism in Europe and so forth. And when they came here, they were very patriotic immediately because they couldn't believe that they lived in a place where they could start a business. They had to work hard. They had to take a lot of flack. They're called pejoratives because they looked and sounded different than the people that were here before them. But they just went to work and in a single generation realized the American dream and become very patriotic. And so we all shared this national heritage of we came here to be free and to support each other in being free and actually being willing to put on a suit and die for each other's freedoms. Now, that doesn't mean what our military has come to be known as far as the world's policemen. It wasn't originally like that. So, yeah, this is a special time in the US, and I believe it's spreading throughout Europe. As you're aware, there are many other leaders that are following suit. And one thing will lead to another, where eventually we will be taken off the financial slave plantation and all the things that we've been suffering through, at least through my lifetime. And we've been shouting, some of us from the rooftops, that, everything's a big scam, especially our money system. So,
Yes.
there was a time in all the way up until the later 1800s, early 1900s, where there's inner retreats. Now the action is out here for our so-called spiritual training. But in these inner retreats in bygone times, they'd invite you in when you had a accumulation of light to a certain extent. And then you were brought in for further teaching. The first thing you had to learn were the ways of the world. You had to learn the financial system, the political system. You had to learn medicine. And their whole thing was, even though it's upside down and ignorant compared to the way the universe really works, if you don't know those ways of the world, then you are going to be vulnerable to them and more vulnerable to the hypnosis.
Yeah.
So I look at the political system and everything that's just happened as part of that journey. We are all having the truth exposed to us as far as how we've been manipulated, mind controlled, and abused, biologically abused, psychologically abused on every level. And so a lot of people are going to have to go through those stages of recognition, which include anger, disillusionment, and so forth.
Yeah.
I went through all those. I just started my early journey, early enough so that I'm over it and I can just get on with
You
business.
have
But
processed enough anger in the
yeah,
gym.
yeah. And fortunately, when I was learning a lot of this, I was full-time, full contact fighting in our martial arts world, and I had a
Yeah,
good
get an
vehicle
outlet.
to, yeah, as a young man with a lot of testosterone. I had a healthy outlet to just release all that aggression and all those things. And then you realize it really has nothing to do with anything in the first place. So yeah, we're in the midst of a big spiritual awakening, and don't minimize. I'm just saying in general, we shouldn't minimize the import of everything that we're seeing happening right now. That aside, because of these larger macro changes in our entire realm, the veils are thin. And I don't know about you, but a lot of us are walking around saying, well, things don't even look real anymore.
Yes.
It all seems, even out in the wilderness here, I feel like I'm looking at facades and kind of peering through and seeing what's really behind the this facade, and seeing firsthand the forces that are projecting this in the first place.
I
And
have
guess
this
what? We're
like
the main projectors.
yes, but I really want to interfere here because, or like have your spin on it. That's like something where I felt like I'm losing it. Maybe it's because I'm in Dubai or whatever, but I swear the sun is just not real here. Like I don't know, like that's the best way to put it. Like I look at the sun, I'm like, it looks beautiful, but it just does not look like a real sun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a shift in consciousness,
Yeah.
which also, when you have a species that is collectively reaching a critical mass of that shift in consciousness, that in turn changes the reality of our entire realm and will make us see things differently and experience things differently. We're talking about sleep and being awake, so called, earlier. Well, when we're awake, we're, most of us, largely in our linear thought processes that are a byproduct of early conditioning. And so when we're evaluating something that we're, sensing with any of our sensory apparatus, or some experience, then that incoming information must, by necessity, be interpreted by our preconceived
Sort of
indoctrinations.
filter. Yeah.
And then it also has to go into a linear time cause and effect sequence. When you're asleep, or when you're waking up when you're not asleep,
Yeah.
whatever the case, now you're not so much caught in that linear interpretation. You're free of it. And now you're understanding or experiencing all the dimensions that are created on every level with our every thought that we entertain. And now we can not only access those greater parts of ourself, but everybody else who is in a congruous flow. And that is what's happening right now. We're
And
getting
how do
out of that linear thought process, which means our experience, things that we see today are going to look different tomorrow. So we're in that transition now where it's like things seem different. Well, they are different because we're perceiving them different. And now it's going to exponentially speed up.
it's like such a fascinating topic to ponder on. And how do you sense that for yourself when you say, like, things don't even seem real anymore when you look out there? I mean, for me, it's like I come to this point many times during the day where I'm like, yeah, it's all a hologram and illusion anyways, but like let's just have fun in it. That kind of experience. But then also just like there is a specific like realness to it, there's a specific,
Mhm.
but it's like what you said earlier about we need to learn how the game works, so we are not we can be in the game and understand the rules and kind of like pretend like we are playing in it, you know
The old in the world, but not of it.
yeah. But how does it,
Exactly.
like, how can we explain to people that they will more and more understand that things don't seem real? But then it's also the question, like, what is real? What does real even mean? What is not
Well,
real?
I think there's two camps of folks. And again, that's not a chasm born out of conflict with each other. It's just a chasm based on personal choice. So I think if maybe it's a little too scary to entertain um, the larger reality, which it is,
Mm.
because when you start doing that, then you have to start letting go of a lot of things. And that can be real scary. It requires a lot of change and so forth. So, and that's okay if your choice is not to go there. but it does explain why we have a certain segment of the Earth's population that are highly agitated, depressed, um, lowering in intelligence every single day, and suffering the worst collective midlife crisis in history. And then,
Mhm.
meanwhile, have other folks that are having more fun than ever.
Yeah, I was,
However,
you
yeah.
you said in one of the podcasts, and I was, yeah, I f- uh, I feel like time was never better. Like I have so many days, like basically every day, I'm just like, it's kind of wild that I live like this.
Hmm.
So that I can just like, with the business that I do, with just like having conversations like that, it's kind of wild if you think about it. When I was younger, I dreamed about it, and now it's like real. Like it's literally happening. And I don't even understand how people are not living like that. How could you go to a 9 to 5 job and like, well, I could not. I mean, I don't know. It's like a completely different reality. I mean, they probably think like the way we live, that's like we lost our mind or something. Thank God we did. But yeah, it's wild.
Well, maybe an alternative perspective is to look at, somebody and, not even judging them, uh, in a harsh way, but just somebody who's, what we call a normie these days. And just looking at them as amazingly powerful spiritual beings with such immense power that they can create an alternative completely contrary to natural order, live in it, and insulate them so thoroughly from all that is that they can't see it. I mean, that talk about the power of creation, of personal creative ability. So I think if we just looked at each other with what each of us are doing, whether or not we choose to create that in our own lives, it's like, that's tremendous. And
It's
I
wild.
think, yeah.
I think about that too, because when I was younger and you can say not as aware or whatever, it was just so much easier for me to do things that were completely against my energetic nature. I want to say, like, pushing the boundaries, like working all the time, like really just like going against everything, basically, that would be in alignment with my nature. Now that I'm aware of my nature, I just cannot do it anymore. Like the amount of things that I could do earlier, or like when I was younger, it's not about age, it's just because of the awareness. Like you just can't anymore. And then if I look at my parents, for example, my dad, it's like pushing the boundaries, like working like a crazy person, really against his energy and all of that. But yeah, he can still do that in a way. I couldn't, we
Mhm.
both couldn't. Like it's like you would all of a sudden start, I don't know, eating junk food and fast food all the time. It just doesn't work anymore. When you were younger, the drugs and like the alcohol might have, but now when I drink alcohol, it's like I really feel it.
Yeah, it's not fun anymore.
No.
And again, it's about detaching the things that used to bring us joy,
Yeah.
or our pastimes. It's like they don't cut it anymore. But then, of course, rather than going into some kind of crisis because life isn't as enjoyable as it used to be, just because you don't have the juice left to keep indulging in certain things anyway, then that's what leads people to the which you see with a lot of people these days, just being in despair. Life isn't that enjoyable, it's hard. But then again, when you start drafting the universe, things become fun, but fun for different reasons, and way more fun than what you used to think, what used to bring you joy. But you have to let go of those things. And that, can be very difficult. And then also, when you understand that going contrary to what your heart is telling you to do, that makes us burn energy in one direction. And that's called entropy. And that's why we grow old and die. I can explain to you why I've got every white hair on my head, but it doesn't matter as long as you kind of use your experience, to go beyond just, let's just say, your personal inclinations and realize that no, we've really got a job to do. That's why we're here. And fulfilling that agreement, because it's a real contract that we made behind the veil, that begins the real joy, and the real experience and the depth, and also just the wonderment of walking around in this realm and saying, wow, it's different than it used to be.
Yeah. You kind of, it feels like you cracked the code, but you're not really able to show it to everyone, you know?
Yeah,
Like sometimes I walk around in the supermarket and I'm like, I know stuff that you will maybe also discover, but maybe you can just like absorb it from my frequency without me even saying anything, because it's
exactly.
all just energetic. I want to say transference. So sometimes I just feel like we also walk around here to sprinkle the frequency around, We don't
Yeah,
even have to say so much.
yeah. In my younger years, I used to love to download information to people. I quickly found out that they don't want that information. They aren't going to follow up on it. And it's just a waste of time. So, in fact, in about the year, when was it? 2001, right after the 911 thing. Um, this is too much of a story, and I can't get into a lot of details anyway, but I was a member of a board of a large banking chain. And that banking chain used to entertain prime ministers and all sorts of folks, and had financial instruments that were very desirable to people. I was put there because one of my old clients put me there in order to use certain people connections I had, and in order to oversee humanitarian funding that the bank was able to generate for all sorts of things. The point of that story is that we had some adventures out of that because we were attacked by folks that didn't want people with legitimate banks actually doing humanitarian things. So we that began a time of tribulation, and it coincided right at the 911 incident, in which case I was notified 2 weeks earlier where and what was going to happen, and to move money out of certain things, you know, because of the uh, incoming events.
Yeah.
And we had a private, encrypted, very small nucleus of people that I traveled with at that point. One of them was ex-CIA and so forth. And right after that event, because we were also behind the scenes involved in certain educational programs to open people's ideas to what the International Monetary Fund was really about, who they were, and and all that kind of good stuff. But mostly just trying to provide solutions. But the moderator of our group, who is an ex-CIA guy, he said, "Look, time of education is over. It's don't even waste your breath. People got it now or not." Now here we are, what, like 25 years later, right?
Yes.
And I'm still out there yakking. I never thought I'd be doing podcasts and things. But so I think, there's still a lot of room for people that are ready to wake up, but it's tough right now because you're going to have to go through a lot of accommodation on the emotional plane to
Mm.
wrap your mind around all that we're being downloaded with, and they don't have the luxury of, like myself, having 50 years to wrap my mind around something. Um, so there's still a lot of good people waking up. On the other hand, there's still folks that are going to choose different things. And I'd say the main takeaway for me is, who am I to judge what somebody else needs for their experience? I get a little annoyed when it affects me, when these zombies, come um, approach you under the guise of agencies and agents and government. And that's where my old fighting self kind of shows up and just wants to give him the double barrel middle finger. On the other hand, that's just the world we live in. And I think that's good for us too, to remain composed in the place or in the presence of some of these folks.
It's where we can practice,
Hmm.
can we apply the peace and everything that we learn in meditation when I want to say shit hits the fan or people approach us like that? Can we stay in that peaceful, blissful state and not let it annoy us, right? Which is
Hmm.
definitely a challenge, and specifically these days. One thing I actually would like for us to dive into, because I obviously
Hmm.
you have a huge background in medicine and studying the body. Um, is the gut microbiome. It's like very much, maybe out of context with the topic, but it's actually not, because I really sense the impact of the gut microbiome in our, I mean, the gut brain is obviously
Hmm.
there is a connection, but how right now specifically, I feel like there's definitely stuff happening with our gut. And I mean, yes, we are influenced with the brain and like with all of that, but I sense we are more influenced with the gut, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Well, the gut is, what some people term the second brain,
Mhm. It's the
and
primary
that's well
brain.
founded. What's that?
The primary brain, I would say. It really
Oh,
drives
right,
impulses
right.
and everything. Yeah, it's wild.
Well, if you understand the human body, we have the neurological pole and the metabolic pole. And this understanding really requires a comprehension of the sky clock again, because the sky clock is raining down this resonance all the time, and 12 different factions, and there's a reason for that, and the reason why our organ systems follow suit with the same numbers and processes and so forth. But that energy, that resonance, which is informational fields, which is no different than the informational fields that are allowing us to have this conversation on an electronic box right now, those informational fields come down through the neurological pole. But then the neurological pole um, creates, in order to impart that information to our body, requires events at the neuromuscular junction. In other words, neurotransmitters are produced, and then when they do their job, they dissipate. They are literally evaporate or degraded. So it's like a death process.
Mm.
So it's the first part of that dipole, or that toroidal field, we could call it. And the reason why this is significant is because the gut brain operates on that neurology. And that neurology is significant because it's contiguous with the outer ecosystem, where all that emanates from in the first place. You have the bacteria in the soil that are communicating with the bacteria in our gut through direct resonance, and that's pure intelligence. And now at the same time, we have things that are being done to our biology, things that we're being exposed to, that are affecting the metabolic pole. That metabolic pole is all the organic processes, the physiology that is created through our organ systems. That now takes that information that is like a little mini death process and brings it back to life through metabolism. Now, what's happening is that metabolism, in being poisoned, is in turn not able to regenerate the neurological pole itself. So our neurology, as well as our ability to process through our neurology, and our neurology originally was created to be superconductive. That means there's a direct transmission of energy with no loss, which means there's no time or need to replenish the energy. It becomes self-regenerating at that point. So with this interplay between the two poles, if that metabolic pole is being destroyed, then the neurological pole is as well, including our gut biome that is, being affected because it's part of that neurological half of our being. And that affects our ability to receive resonance efficiently, let alone in a superconductive fashion that would allow us to be privy to all knowledge everywhere at any time, which means you don't have to open up a book, you receive it directly because all information is in those akashics, which are accessible to us all the time. But of course, just like the fabrication of a species of exchange like money that you think you need, we also have been taught that you need certain people to be middlemen for our spiritual health, or that we need, foodstuffs in plentiful supply in order to supply our energy, when in fact we get all that directly. So, we're in this process now of understanding, okay, we've got to somehow create, uh, a block, or just in a way where that poisoning doesn't happen in our metabolism. And the first thing is to take your mind off it, but then at the same time, learn how to do things that are going to cleanse our metabolism without being overly preoccupied with toxicity, because now you're, shooting yourself in the foot. And then that in turn is going to allow metabolism, which is the yin principle, to regenerate and nourish our more masculine neurological pull, so that our gut biome, our real brain, which actually is, our real brain is our heart, but the the appendages of that intelligence are our gut, our brain, and so forth. So I'm kind of rambling a little, sorry, but I hope that just explains a little bit. And a lot of this can really be understood through anthroposophical medicine. And, Steiner and Goethe really detailed a lot of this. I kind of believe certain things. I don't like to just regurgitate stuff from books, but everything that I believe to be true are things that I proved out of my clinical practice with just doing things, observing results, and then over a great amount of time, over a lot of people, finding out that, wow, it seems to be that's the way it works.
Have you noticed the effect or influence or interplay, I want to say, between specifically the moon and the moon transits and the gut microbiome?
Yeah. So, what's the moon in your opinion?
I mean, that's a whole nother conversation right there. But just like I obviously I work with astrology, so I track the moon's transits, and like the moon obviously is the fastest changing object, we can say. Fluctuates the most, is connected to our emotions, and obviously has a huge effect on also the financial system, just the emotions of humans. But
Mhm.
I see it mostly because of its connection to the gut microbiome. And also, like, with women, for example, it was always said when a woman has her moon, she is more susceptible for catching an illness because the immune system is weaker, for example.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts on that. Where to begin? And I asked, what do you think the moon is? Because I have I believe it's a living intelligence. It's a
Yeah.
plasma field, probably not a solid object. Folks
No.
that I've worked with have spent a lot of time doing everything from photographing to whatever. So it's obviously a living technology, and yeah, I would agree that it's absolutely playing a huge role as far as conveying informational fields. That's what the job of the constellations, the sun and the moon is.
Yeah.
And if you look at the sun and moon, the yin yang, and you look at the moon, um, you know, being more akin to those yin forces, we'll say, it makes real sense why, women used to all, menstruate at the same time and so forth. And, for many years, when I helped a lot of women recover their endocrine health, It required me to, over a period of months, work with them in certain ways because a lot of, especially like menopausal and even women still in their, menstruating years, just having all sorts of difficulties. So the first thing we do, and even postmenopausal women, we'd duplicate the cycles, the natural moon cycles in their body. So I have a little chart, that I would give to them. And, it had all the phases of the moon, 28 days. And then we would have certain things on certain days that they had to take according to the phase of the moon and everything. So we weren't just using plant medicines and other substances in order to try to override problems. We were really doing is syncing them back up with those natural substances that would provide the patterns at the exact time of the moon cycles in order to bring them back into normal function. And just magic happened. It takes a little bit of coaxing and training, just like an athlete in training. You have to go through the ropes, but it would absolutely work. So yeah, I became a big believer in understanding how not just our external environment, but even the stuff going on above our heads has a huge effect on us. And in the practice of acupuncture, what you understand is the larger meridian systems are those conduits that are supposed to be seamless with the natural cycles outside. And when there's a break in that continuity, say you live in a city, spend your time indoors and electronics and everything, well, you sever that connection and you get out of sync. That's where all our problems begin, including not even being able to think coherently anymore.
Yes, but obviously, to go back to the original question, it's more like,
Uh-huh.
how do I put that? Are we influenced by the moon in that sense? Like the most, specifically also with the gut microbiome and what's going on. Like even I don't want to say that, yeah, it's probably not even mind control, it's gut control.
Well, think of it as a technology where it's an electrical system. The moon and the sun and the constellations are conductors. They
Yeah.
have the informational fields that are conducted to us. Now, there are main energy informational fields that come from the sun and moon, I believe. And then
Yeah.
those are modified, which would be, the next step in a electrical system, which is induction. It's a modification of those informational fields so it's stepped down or appropriated for whatever the needs are on the ground. And then you have the capacitors that receive that stuff, at the South Pole, which are the minerals and things, which is why they're important for our body. So, yeah, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I believe the sun and the moon are just the yin and the yang, and both equally important as far as conveying those informational fields to us.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I was just wondering if you, as were working with people and like observing correlations, maybe if you noticed some patterns there,
Oh,
between.
absolutely. Certain times of the month, you definitely. I connected these dots when I was in emergency medicine, and anybody in ER work, they're going to tell you that people are, uh-oh, it's full moon. You come on for a shift, and it's like, people are going to be going bat crazy and everything. So, everybody acknowledges that it has an effect. Um, so if you look at as far as a yin and a yang, the moon being more the yin, being more that emotional nature. And if people are not together on other levels, then it brings out the crazies in people, which is emotions ungoverned by some kind of rationalization or rationality, we should say.
Yeah,
So, yeah. Um,
where the term lunatic comes from. And does that then
mhm.
explain why it also has such a huge effect on immunity?
So immunity, um, I understand the concept. I don't think it works that way. Immunity connotes a biological battleground, of good guys against bad guys. And in reality and nature, as we've already mentioned, we have two things happening: conveyance of information, and then that information solidifying into our experience, and then a radiation of that, back to source. So we're really not, for instance, when I was in medicine and, the whole AIDS epidemic started happening, and, I was still operating in the mindset of antibodies and things, and, oh, you have AIDS because you have an antibody for HIV, or, whatever, or that's what
Yeah.
HIV was supposed to be. But then through clinical practice, realized that there was no correlation. There's really no such thing as an antibody that was there protecting. It was just one of the poles doing its job. And where we have problems is not because of an immune system deficiency, it's a lack of balance between the poles. So in bioterrain medicine, you're not operating within that battlefield metaphor. You're operating on balance and looking what the two poles do, and then understanding how to bring that into balance. So sorry, your original question now, immunity, are you saying how that the moon cycles and things affect your immunity?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I just answered the question relative to my belief system, which is it's not that the immunity is effective, but it's balance between those, the metabolic and the neurological pull. And that's what needs to be fixed.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense if you see it from that perspective, because again, going back to, I'm just like taking women as an example here. I mean, obviously it applies to men as well, but women also used to, when they really worked in sync with their moon cycle, you have those phases where in a specific phase of your cycle, you need more to rest more, or you
Hmm.
need more sleep, or you better exercise around that time of the month because of, it's better for you. But because we are all not really in sync with those waves, I want to say, we are just going against our nature, and then it just plugs us out. And that might be the reason why we are getting sick. It's more like the system wants to be in balance again.
Yeah. And then, words are so important. It's not just a matter of semantics, but getting sick is a misnomer, I believe. What's happening is there's a lack of balance, and then the body, in its um, effort to right itself, is going
Then
to
it
create
is
symptoms in the
recalibration phase,
process.
I want to say.
Yes,
The
thank you.
body is trying to
Yeah,
recalibrate.
just like traditionally people get more colds and flus in the winter time. Well, it's not that we're sick more often in the winter. It's just if I look out my window right now, winter is approaching, leaves are falling. Things are going to be composting and look kind of dreary and gray for the next few months. But, there's this great alchemical process going on. Um, you know, with uh, this whole seasonal thing, and the same thing happens in our bodies because again, we are supposed to, whether you live in a tropical area or in a northern climate, doesn't matter. You're going to be going through seasonal changes that require composting, and composting, if you have a lot to compost, you're going to have more symptoms. And, we were talking earlier about, well, what changed in our experience at different times with learning different things. And I said, well, your body even changes. And that includes, well, we don't seem to get the same colds and flus anymore because we're doing our homework year round and don't have to go through a massive composting. Now that we're being sprayed more frequently and inundated more with microwaves and things, I think a lot of us feel the effects of that, but then we do other extraordinary things that maybe we wouldn't have had to have done in other times. just in order to maintain that purity within the body, again, without becoming overly obsessive about it.
Yeah, it's just part of your hygiene now,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
Like I'm brushing my teeth and I'm having a sound bath because I need to just recalibrate my frequency a little bit better.
Yeah.
Oh,
And one of the things I did on every patient I ever used to see was a set of in-house labs that I do, and bottom line, it would take chemistry and extrapolate it to electricity. And so we're able to understand really how the body works in that way and treat the body in a whole different way when you look at it under an electrical lens, we'll say. And that's also allowed us to see that the body is really not nurtured just with physical foodstuffs and things. And it also showed us that the greatest toxicity that would throw our electrical line of resistance and therefore our health awry is because of thoughts and
no.
emotions.
Yeah.
So much greater than anything we could possibly put in our mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. You literally hypnotize or influence your cells, right? All day
Hmm.
long. And that
Yeah.
that's the biggest poison when we try to find a devil outside. It's really not. It's always what I like to say, the matrix inside has to die because it makes you
Yeah.
sick. Yeah.
And that's why the wonder drug of our age, antibiotics, was created, because they knew a long time ago we didn't need antibiotics, but it would be very profitable and also a way to control our mentality, because it would keep us in that paradigm of sick and then some drug getting us better. And then going back to the gut biome, the first thing that happens with antibiotics is we kill all those little um, co-workers in there, and that's the beginning of the end of our gut biome, our intelligence, and everything else. So I've been exposed to some folks and some experiences where I've come to understand that there are no coincidences, and it's not like some people at some level of the hierarchy of the AMA or whatever just said, oh, oops, we got it wrong. No, it was purposeful. It was to poison us, it was to control us, and it was for population control, period. That's just the way it is.
I love that you bring up antibiotics because I feel like they have been like the biggest fucking devil, if you want to say, in my
Hmm.
life when I was younger.
Hmm.
It was not a vaccine or whatever. I wasn't really, vaccinated anyways as a child, but still, like antibiotics, the amount of times I needed to take them and how it screwed me up, it's wild.
Yeah.
It's really
And
wild.
the most poisonous thing about them is we develop this mindset that we need those to get well. So it divorces us from our innate abilities. And that's the biggest crime. And then, a side effect is, oh yeah, by the way, you're killing yourself at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, if I mean, I would say if you have taken them a few times, then at some point you kind of need them because you don't have any other helpers inside of you anymore, or you need to
They
rebuild
can
them.
be cultivated back, but
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
slow process,
If you
very
know
slow.
how, and as a
Yeah.
child you obviously don't, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Which is
Oh
also
yeah, I
that
was, yeah.
probably when I went into all of that, I was like so shocked in a way that doctors would not educate you how to properly like nourish your gut microbiome afterwards. If you really understand what antibiotics do, then the next thing in the conversation with the doctor should be like, okay, and then afterwards, like XYZ you need to do to cultivate your microbiome back again.
Well, they're ignorant of that that's even a reality. They aren't taught that. And then simultaneously, now I went through some good indoctrination when I was at Stanford. And you just it's like you're in awe of like, wow, I'm in this esteemed institution and they know everything and they have billions of dollars, to do anything they want, and all these amazing facilities and technologies, and so you come out of that indoctrination. It's real indoctrination because number one, they don't just give you an inordinate amount of information to absorb, but they do it under adverse conditions. They make you sleep deprived. They
Mm.
stress you out to the max. It's true MK Ultra mind control. So to go to one of these doctors, even if they have the best of intentions, which a lot of them do, they don't know any better. And then if you say, "Hey, doc, after I take these antibiotics, should I build up my gut biome?" They're going to look at you like you've got three heads.
Yeah, it's true, and that it actually is a full circle. Even with everything that we talk about, I think the second you start blaming anyone or judging anyone, that's when you are screwed again. Just be like,
Mhm.
okay, accept it and like see them, we don't know if they play it purposefully or not purposefully. It doesn't even matter. We don't even have to think about it. It's just like see them as they are and then like, okay, you play that part and I know better for myself. And
Yeah,
that's my part,
right. Now,
which,
I was a child in the 50s,
yeah.
and I was exposed to everything, just horrible mercury fillings and that were totally unnecessary, and vaccines, which were very moderate compared to today, but they're still bad.
Mm.
Food, post-war, we're all post-war kids, and uh, new fast food things were on, and all of a sudden all the moms said, "Oh, this is cool," we just open up a roll and throw it in, and you have instant biscuits and just all this horrible stuff. But here we are, all these years later, we're still alive,
And look at you,
and and there's no reason why we should be, which
True.
brings us to the larger realm and the fact that we are not alone, and that there is an intelligence hierarchy, including us and those of us that have gone through the experience and consciously made the journey to become a realized being. And those beings behind the scenes not only communicate with us, but they keep us alive. And by a lot of the teachings that they've put forth through like Saint Germain Foundation and so forth, not the New Age stuff, but the authentic gold stuff, they just flat out say, look, the average individual in incarnation now would not live beyond the age of 12 in the realm that you've debauched unless we were behind the scenes juicing you up all the time so that you would have the
Giving you some
opportunity that
extra
you
shots
came
here.
here
Yeah.
for. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of help. And then, of course, when we're in alignment with the truth, then all those things can be not just mitigated, but literally consumed, cause, effect, record, and memory. And you
Mm.
have to lose the memory because the neurology, what we consider memory of even bad things happening in our biology, is an electrical event. And
Mm.
there is a way to erase that memory, and our physiology will, on the instant, outpicture the new reality free of that memory. As
Yeah.
Kamala would say, we're no longer burdened by the past.
Oh, thank God. Yeah, it's true. You can, I mean, a lot of teachers, I mean, time is an illusion anyways, but it's just like you can re-pattern yourself in that sense.
Mhm.
It's just,
We
yeah,
don't have to do karma. We
no.
don't have to do original sin. We don't have to, be purging our physical bodies every single second. The most important thing is to understand the truth, align with it, and let the real folks behind the scene pour their radiation through us, which not only selflessly helps the larger events, but also heals us in the process. So it's great. It's a twofer. We can't lose.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's also really empowering for people to just hear and remember, because again, then this whole realm that we're in is a lot more fun.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
just, we're not alone, we're supported, and we have evidence for that. As much as we can't maybe see it all the time, but we
Mhm.
it's just logical sense, because otherwise we would
Yeah.
already be screwed.
And you can see your real self. You know, there's an electronic body right over our heads that is through a line of consciousness connecting with the glands in our brain. And that thread is goes through all of our experience. It's a prism and then out pictures our body relative to those overlays that we've created ourselves.
Mm.
But when we heal that sense of separation between ourselves and that electronic body and realize that our body is nothing more than a projection of that electronic body, and if we are now no longer perceiving perception or separation, then that electronic body is no longer needing to go through all the prisms of our past experience, you know, mistakes and so forth. And then that's where the ascension process begins. And I can absolutely say, and not just me, but a lot of other people, but my own firsthand experience as well, as you can see that electronic body when you focus on it and acknowledge it enough, you'll actually catch more than just glimpses of it. And when you do that, then you have um, let's just say the old doubts fade pretty quick. And you also understand that this vehicle, our biology, is not who we are, it's a projection of who we are. And what we're here to do is to, you know, heal that separation. Um, and also reunite our heart and our mind, because the heart and mind are not supposed to be separate, they're a single unit. And what's happened in our indoctrinations is we live in our minds, we're separated from our heart. So it's like a navigation system in a car that's gone awry, that's won't shut up even though you already reached your destination. You know, you just need to use it for what it's good for, the mental plane, and then say thank you and turn it off and, you know, get information directly from that point on.
Yeah, yeah, it's absolutely true. I mean, yeah. And, you know, in the meantime, we can download some healing vibrations, frequencies, information into the brain, into the navigation system to help it remember, hey, it's also time to shut up sometimes. Because
Yep.
that brings us back to stillness, right? Because if there's stillness in the head, then usually the mind, the heart is also at peace and there's more connection.
Mhm.
Definitely.
And that's where divine thought originates, is in the stillness, not in the vibration. The vibration is an after effect. You can't find God in after effects, you know, just you need to go to the source and then create the after effects that you want.
Yeah. All right, Barry, that was an amazing conversation. I love all the angles that we went. I mean, we could probably go on into many other angles, but I feel like people want to digest first, as I like to say, and then probably, hopefully, also go and stalk you and catch up on all the AlfaVedic episodes that you have as well, all the interviews. Do you plan to do more solo episodes? I like your solo episodes as well, I have to say.
You know, actually, yeah. Now that harvest is over and everything, and I have a little bit more time, then I'm going to be engaging more on that. I plan on also having some programs, educational programs going on in our membership site and everything. I haven't
Nice.
had time these last few months, but we're getting there. Yeah. And so we'll definitely be doing more solo podcasts. Podcast is an interesting thing, so I never wanted to do them in a million years. And when I was requested, I said no. And
Thank you.
I was kind of convinced for certain reasons to do them. And so here we are. And it was also during the time of COVID. And I was in with a group of doctors that were going beyond just, oh, yeah, you have the right to choose, but we're also saying, you know, we need to reevaluate this germ theory thing in the first place, and the whole thing's based on false premises. And so I got out with some other doctors internationally, and then that led into podcast and so forth. So here we are.
Thank God it did. Thank God. I'm really so grateful for AlfaVedic and I mean everything that you put out so far. So I'm looking forward to it. Definitely. We'll link everything down below. Is there any other place that I can link where people can find you? When is the next Music in the Sky happening? I also am really bummed that I missed that this year, but
Mhm.
definitely want to join at some point.
Yeah. AlfaVedic is alphavedic.com. Music and Sky is something that one of our partners puts on. It's not officially an AlfaVedic event, but we
Feels
support
like
it,
that.
and a lot of good people have found their way to AlfaVedic through Music and Sky. So, and it's a great event. So, but that's not officially part of our company.
Okay. So everything is AlfaVedic. I will link it obviously down below. You also have a shop
Okay.
on there, and obviously the podcast. And yeah, I mean, definitely looking forward for harvest season for you. I will let you know when the episode airs as well, so you can spread the word for it. And yeah, hopefully we will have you back on in some future time, and we can ponder on how this whole realm is going to evolve, I want to say.
Well, I'm available whenever you like, and an honor to be here with you. And thank you so much.
Thank you as well.